Nobody starts at the finish line. You have to start somewhere. In order for you to get to where you're going, to meet that destination, you can't think that you're going to get there instantly.
Welcome to another episode of the Mrmindfulminute podcast, where we touch on different things of different areas of life, on how we could go from a nothing place to a something place. And today I have a special guest. I'm going to let her introduce herself, because what better person to introduce you than you? Please tell the people who you are, where you're from, and what it is that you do.
All right. What's up, Mr. Mindful Minutes? My name is Life Coach B, as in Bravo, and I am from Akron, Ohio. And what I do is I specialize in coaching abused women on how to overcome their trauma and how to fulfill their purpose in life. So that's my specialty. That's what I do.
Love it. I mean, that's a topic that I feel as though that people think that, oh, well, I went through this and I want to keep it to myself. So I think that is an amazing thing that you're doing, that you're allowing yourself to express your story in a way where it is helping other people to maybe get through theirs, or even be able to express their story as well. That is really good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And going through my trauma, it definitely had me at a standstill. I was scared to move forward with my life. And even when I finally decided to move forward with my life, my mind was still back and stuck in that trauma, right? So I had to make sure that not only did I move into my new season of life and I overcame those physical things, my mindset also had to move forward. And that was the issue. And that's where I found passion in helping other women overcome their trauma, because it's not just a body type of progress, it's a mental progress as well. And like you said, you have to be great, and it starts with your mindset. And so that is what I help these women get through, is their mental battles and fighting their demons and fighting their trauma, and how to clear out all of that, dead space and things that don't help. And then find ways to initiate the positivity. And like you said, find the unfavorable and pull those things out and stick with the things that are favorable, so that we can move forward with not just ourselves, but also our mindset. So that's really the specialty. And that's what kind of led me to this path. Because when I was back then, my mind was still back then. I didn't even know I was going to be a life coach. I didn't know I wanted to help abused women. I was trying to be an insurance agent, because that's where all the money was, And so I found passion and peace and love in this life in progress. And the only thing I can do is just share my experiences and stories with these other women who have also been abused, to help them move forward, with their lives.
Wow. That is really tough, I can imagine, because you have to get out of your own head.
Yes. And that was the hardest part for me.
And listen, here's the thing. It's really difficult because you can't get away from you.
Right.
You can get away from other people, but you can't get away from yourself. And I realize that a lot of times in our own thoughts is where a lot of our damage comes from. So you actually saying you can't just get out of the trauma. You got to get out of the headspace of the trauma. That's deep. Yeah. Because what you removed from the trauma, but you still in the headspace of the trauma, so you still moving like you in the trauma.
Right.
That's the toughie one right there. Now, how do you help people to transition their mind to follow what their body is going to do?
So it's definitely, like you said, it starts with identifying those thoughts, right? Figuring out exactly where these thoughts are coming from and why is it making you feel a certain type of way. And not only that, but it has a lot to do with being comfortable with your thoughts, because like me going through that, I was running physically, running, and my mind was still there. And I tried everything, right? I tried to, work out and, just kind of keep my head off the things. And I had to face it. You have to think through those things and you have to face those feelings and you have to get in touch with that, right? So a lot of that comes with, are you strong enough to deal with these thoughts yourself? Do you need a support group? Do you need a support system, right? With me, there were different types of people that I talked to along my journey, which led me to finding out like, hey, I'm good physically and I'm here now, but now I need to take care of my mind because I'm still back in that same exact trauma mentally, right? Which was also stopping me from reaching my potential self, my true self, and, my path in this life. So I had to reach out to, a therapist, and my therapist, she really got into the deep habitual habits of being comfortable, right, with the thoughts that makes you uncomfortable. Because a lot of people run from that. They don't want to talk about their past because it's too painful. It hurts too much, right? And so she taught me how to be comfortable with my thoughts, even if they hurt, right? And understanding exactly where those thoughts came from. Once I resurfaced that and I got comfortable with thinking things through, talking about them, being open about them, now I found ways to approach my feelings, right? Because whatever we think is connected to how we feel. And that is also connects to how we behave, how we react to certain things, how we treat ourselves and how we treat other people. So it's a big, big, big chain reaction. So I first had to grab a hold of those thoughts and gain my power back. And I had to tell myself, like, listen, this is what happened to me, but this is not who I am. I'm no longer a victim. I'm a survivor. And so we got into the habit of breaking and taking those pieces of trauma in my head mentally and how to put them right in front of me so I can identify them and understand where they are, and then find ways to overcome and approach and help myself, right? Nurture myself, help myself get through just like I did physically. And so it's a process. You have to do it mentally. You have to do it all the time. And not only that, but you have to unpack those feelings once you get comfortable with them, right? You can't keep it there. And that's what I was doing. I was keeping everything in my head. I was scared to unpack, right? And unpacking is releasing those emotions and those negative feelings and those thoughts of trauma, right? Releasing them, right? So finding ways to do that. I do journaling because I like to speak out and I like to, poetry. I've always been good with that. And so I like to write down all of my feelings. I like to write them down no matter how bad it hurts. And I like to read them and say it out loud so that I'm comfortable with it, right? I'm facing those demons that are right in front of me. And I'm like, look, I'm no longer scared of you. I've been through this. If I can physically get out of it, I can mentally get out of it as well. And that also has a lot to do with God, right? It's crazy because a lot of us come into terms with meeting and greeting with God when we are at our most weakest, darkest, and isolated moments, right? And so I had to go through a lot of things by myself. For one, because I was scared to speak out, right? I thought people would talk down on me because I was abused or ask me a lot of questions I wasn't ready to answer, you know what I mean? And so I was really, really, really uncomfortable with reaching out and seeking help. And so I felt like I was alone. And that's why I kept trapping myself into that box. And I wasn't being comfortable with the feelings and things like that that was coming upon me. And so that's when I discovered God. And that's when I discovered how amazing he is and how he has the ability to regulate our minds, right? To help us, right? Renew our thinking. And with a simple prayer. And I learned this, it's crazy because God works in mysterious ways. I was on Twitter and it was to the point to where my thoughts were just too much, because I even suffered from, suicidal thoughts and things like that. So it was just too much for me at the moment. And so I got on Twitter and this girl said, are you having overbearing thoughts? Are you feeling overwhelmed? You just can't take it. She said, say this one simple prayer, right? And it's ask God to renew my thinking. Now at the time, it sounded good, but I'm like, this isn't going to work. You know what I'm saying? But it also has a lot to do with having faith, right? And believing in your source, right? Just as we just talked about, having outside sources, internal sources, right? So God was one of my internal sources. And I've always knew who he was, like just from being a young child. But once I actually started believing in him and trusting in him, he shined a light on me that I never knew was there. And he helped me renew my thinking. And this is something that you have to do more than once throughout the day. You know what I'm saying? Even though I'm where I'm at now and I'm in the mental space that I'm at now, there's still moments in time where I may have a little PTSD. Certain things may trigger me and I get to thinking how I used to think. I just stop. Once again, I'd be comfortable with those thoughts. I write them down, I say them out loud, and I ask God to renew my thinking. So we are getting used to those thoughts. We're being comfortable with those thoughts. We're finding ways to fight against those thoughts. And we're dumping and getting rid of all the thoughts that don't help us. And we're receiving and being more welcome and opening to the positive thoughts and things that are going to help our minds stay elevated. So it's it's like taking care of a child, right? You're taking care of it, you're being consistent with it, and you're not giving up on yourself, and you're reaching out to those sources to help you stay elevated. And that's kind of how I got to where I am with learning and treating my mind on how to lift weights, like making it stronger, right, against those traumatic thoughts that, seem to enter my mind every now and then.
Whew. Listen, you said a whole lot that is necessary for us to address. Because one from unpacking stuff and then facing it. Because it's one thing, it's almost like going on a vacation and the vacation was horrible, and you just like, you know what, that vacation was horrible. I'm not even going to unpack my luggage. I'm going to just go home and leave all the clothes in there, because what happened, it just needs to be there. And so when we actually unpacking our luggage, it's like we start looking at the clothes like, man, this is reminding me of that horrible trip that I went on. And so when we unpack the traumas that we had and we face it and deal with it, we got to now go and wash it. We go wash that stuff and say, you know what, because I still want to wear these clothes.
Right.
But I'm going to wash these clothes, and me washing it is symbolic of, you know what, I'm going to just get rid of all the dirty stuff that was on this clothes from that last trip that I was on. And so when we look at it from that standpoint, it helps us to actually be able to say, no, this is something that I need to do. And something that you talked about, dealing with PTSD, right? Mm-hmm. Something that could become a trigger and you don't even realize it. Something becomes a trauma that you don't even realize it, and boom, is right there. And a lot of times people think that, oh, well, you're not in those type of environments anymore, so you shouldn't feel that way. You shouldn't have these triggers, or you heal from this, or you heal from that. But that is not true, because if I have a cut on my arm, well, the cut is always going to be there, even though it has healed. And so all it would take is for me to apply a little pressure there, and I'm going to feel a measure of discomfort and pain, even though it has healed. So you cannot get rid of that. It is still going to get there, but you have to have, as you said, a system in place, no matter if it's external sources or if it's internal sources, that is going to help you to be able to not stay in that place.
Yes.
Listen, I understand what you're saying 100%, because I've been there. I've dealt with depression. I've dealt with PTSD. I still go through my things where I'm fighting that stuff. And sometimes we have to just learn how to say, okay, I'm in this dark place. What do I need to do in order to get out of this dark place? Maybe I need to get a flashlight and just put my flashlight on one particular thing, because if you're in a dark place, you can't see nothing else but what the flashlight is on. So if the flashlight is only focusing on positive things, that's going to help me to be able to say, okay, I just got to follow this trail of positivity, and it's going to help me to get out of this dark place. So, okay, now let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Is there a point where fear actually stops you from actually wanting to move out of the situation that you're in? Does fear play a part in that?
That's a good question. And it did for a very, very, very long time, right? And like you said, let's use that flashlight reference, because that was a genius right there. So when I was letting fear stop me, I didn't know that there was a flashlight in the room, right? I did not know that there was even a way for me to find a light, to flash it on positive things that would help me get through it, right? That's how deep down under I was in. Like, that's how bad everything around me was at the time, right? And even if other people tried to enter the room, right, and give me a flashlight. I didn't even know what a flashlight was, right? That's how bad. I didn't know how the flashlight worked. I didn't know what a flashlight was. I didn't know how to use it. I didn't know anything about it, right? And so that stopped me from finding those sources that could help me become stronger and that could help me become wiser. That stopped me from loving myself and actually believing in myself and continuing that type of love and self-care, right? That stopped me from treating myself the best way possible, and also from communicating with other people, right? From getting into other relationships and even with my family. So it affected a lot of things around me, and I was in the dark. And since fear was there and I knew what fear was and I didn't know what anything else outside of fear was, I was trapped in that room of darkness. I didn't know what the flashlight was. Even if somebody was to give it to me, I wouldn't know what to do with it. And so that stopped me from facing the life that God wanted to give me. And that stopped me from understanding my gift and how I could use that to help other people as well. So it stopped me from a lot of different things, especially how I viewed and seen myself. And then as well as moving forward and figuring out what are these next steps of my life. So I was like completely blind. If you want to, keep it real, I was completely blind. I didn't know what to do or how to approach anything in my life, right? And even though I knew that God was there, like I said, I didn't have that faith. I didn't believe. And those two things just stopped me, right? I was completely done for. I thought my life was over. The way I seen outcomes of life, I didn't want to work. I didn't have any motivation. And I gave up on myself. I gave up on myself. I gave up on my life. I gave up on the people around me. And that completely had me at a standstill, right? But again, it starts with the mind. Once I learned what I'm capable of doing, and once I learned that, this fear is not me, I am no longer a victim, I'm a survivor. And I started to understand what it was. That was me putting the batteries inside of my flashlight. And that was me learning that the flashlight has two switches. You can keep it on, or you can keep it off, or you can turn it on, right? To me, I thought it was only an off button, no light was going to come out. So this taught me how to put the batteries in, how to seal the batteries, and how to turn on that light. That's what that taught me. And so even though it had me stuck for a very, very, very long time, I'm glad I went through it so that I could discover how to turn my flashlight on.
Wow, that's powerful. I like what you just said when you said I didn't even realize there was a flashlight in the room.
Right.
That is very, very deep. Even if somebody was trying to hand you a flashlight, you're like, right. What is this? I don't even know what this is. But the person that is giving it to you, they're like, you should know what this is. It's a flashlight. I'm giving it to you. It's, and so that reminds me that what fear actually does to us is it put us in a state of confusion where things that we would normally know how to recognize what it is, we no longer will know what it is. And we lose that confidence in ourselves because fear has taken it away from us.
Right.
So let me ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you help people to regain the confidence in themselves in order for them to truly believe in loving themselves? Because I think that you get into a state of not loving yourself because somebody externally couldn't love you. So you start to believe that, well, I can't love me either because I tolerated this behavior. So how do you help people to love themselves when they start losing love in themselves?
Yeah, these are all excellent, good questions. So I always start with them, with where they are now, right? Because they could still be around their abuser. They may still be talking to their abuser, even if they've stopped talking to the source that caused the problem still may be trying to approach them, right? So quick example for me. I kept feeling negative about myself. I didn't believe in myself. That's because I was defining myself through the eyes of my abuser, right? And the reason why is because I always was around this person. I loved this person with everything in me, to the point to where I thought I needed that person, right? I had a deep connection to that person, which is why I always define myself through them, because I love them, they love me, we're in love, we're together. So however he feels is how I view myself, right? Because this is the person at the end of the day that I'm considered being with, right? So I learned to separate yourself from the abuser and break those connections so that you're no longer seeking the approval from that person, because it teaches you, you have to be, when you're codependent, because that's how it was with me. When you're codependent, you're seeking the approval of other people all the time, right? So you're not even giving yourself the opportunity to define who you are and how you see yourself and how you think, self-love or what self-love look like. So what I do is I help these women separate and break those codependency habits and attachments and teach them how to be independent, right? How to understand your values and your feelings and what's important to you, right? Getting into the habit of that, because it's hard, even some days to this day. Sometimes I feel guilty canceling a plan on a friend that we were supposed to do certain things with. So it's a process, right? But we get them into the habit of separating, detoxing, getting away from the abuser and their language and their talks and their negative impact, right? Breaking down those connections and understanding that it's important of how you view things and you being in front of your definitions of how you see yourself and how you feel about yourself. And not only that, but again, going back to my source, which is God, I had to understand how important I was through him, right? God puts us all here for a purpose, with a purpose. And that was always my leading thought. And that's kind of what helped me develop that independency process on how I am important to God and how he views me and what are my God gifts, my God-given gifts, abilities, and talents, right? What is God's love? Love is kind. It does not judge. It's gentle. It's compassionate. And I had to literally remove myself from that horrible environment with that horrible person in order to be in the light of God and understand how to think these things through myself and how to look at myself for me and not seek the approval from other people.
I love that. I love that because that's very, very necessary, and from what I heard you say was we have to self-validate,
right?
And then we have to remember that every relationship that we are in should never be codependent. It should be interdependent.
Right.
Where I rely on you, you rely on me. Not I'm just relying on you and there's nothing that you are relying on me from, or vice versa. And so when we look at it, and we actually say, hey, how have I validated myself? Maybe speaking up for myself is a part of self-validation. Well, where did I lose my validation of speaking up for myself at? And how do I actually start validating myself and speaking up? Well, maybe I need to say these things in my mind. I remember, I believe it was the movie Ali, and Muhammad Ali was trying to say something to Malcolm X, and he said it to himself first, like 3 times, and then he said it out loud.
Right.
So a lot of times when we trying to validate ourselves, we got to say things to ourselves enough to make us comfortable to actually projecting in it to somebody else. I love what you are actually, how you're showing people that it's very important for them to self-validate. It ain't nothing wrong with somebody validating you. I ain't saying that. But if you don't validate you, then the outside validation can only go but so far. It doesn't really mean anything at some point, because when they don't do it, then you are left with nothing.
Right. And I like how you said the self-validation. I was trying to get around to the word, but you confirmed it right there. You put the key right in there and you locked it. So thank you for that. I like that term.
No, absolutely. Look, we have to do that, right?
Right.
We have to do that because guess what? In reality, other people could try to validate you, but if you don't validate you, it doesn't mean anything. Like a million people could say, hey, you're so beautiful. But if you don't look in the mirror and say, hey, you're so beautiful, it doesn't matter. You're not going to believe it. You have not validated yourself, so you can now no longer even receive something positive. So you have to deposit positivity in order for you to receive positivity, because if you only deposit negativity, then when positivity tries to come, they just cancel each other out. And now you still have.
Right. I like how you put those pieces together. That's very true. And that's what I learned from myself. And it took me to isolate and be away from that person to understand and learn what self-validation is, and then how to apply that to myself. So I always start with that detoxing, that separation. And even if you physically separate yourself from your abuser, they still have ways to talk to you, right? If you are not reaching out to them, you're not calling them, you're not texting them, you're not hanging out. If he still has your number and you're still seeing those missed calls, that's a call for you to try to go back, right? If he still has text messages and access to getting in your inbox and you're not replying, but you're reading those things, right? You are still depositing that negativity, which makes it even harder for you to self-validate who you are at a positive angle, which is why I'm very, very, very hard on pushing that detox first, and then giving yourself that time, space, and opportunity to self-validate who you are and really understand what your values are.
All right. So when you start talking about detox, right, like the first thing that comes to my mind is like, cleansing of the body, and me being a holistic teacher and stuff like that, right? So one of the things that I know is, yes, it's very important for us to detox, and there's a lot of things that we stay away from, like, especially with me being plant-based, I stay away from a lot of stuff, right? But I also know that avoidance isn't a cure, right? So what do you do in that situation where you like, okay, I know that at some point I can't just be at an avoidance space because I'm not curing anything, because all I'm doing is avoiding, but I haven't cured anything. So what would you say to help to people to getting into that space? So now that they have detox, but they like, you know what, I don't need to avoid anymore. I can deal with this, and
right.
Now I still be good.
Right. So that comes with creating peace, right? And with me, peace is resting in the Lord, and also forgiveness, right? You have to make peace with what broke you. And like me, you're going to keep running and avoiding and ignoring if you don't face that. And one of the things you have to face is forgiving your abuser, which is very, very difficult and hard. But once you do that, you're fully releasing all the stages of unforgiveness, right? So a part of the detoxing phase is to get rid of the stages of unforgiveness, right? And I've been through each and every phase, right? The phase of bitterness, the phase of betrayal, the phase of resentment, the phase of wanting to get back at your abuser, the phase of holding a grudge. All of those things impacts you and how you see yourself, and it stops you from moving forward, and it keeps you at that standstill position. So it's important to practice the pieces of forgiveness, and not only forgiving your abuser, but forgiving yourself for even allowing you to get through and go through the things that, you let your abuser do. So it's also about forgiveness as well, and removing yourself from that situation so that you can prove to yourself that you are independent enough to move on and live this life by yourself. And of course, with the helpful sources, right? The things and people that are positive and supportive and uplifting. And that way you're not reaching on to your abuser for this love and affection, and you're not compromising yourself again and going back to the person that's causing you all this hurt and all this pain and all this discomfort.
So, all right, you talked about different phases of forgiveness, and that sounds like a book. I don't know if you're working on a book or anything, but it sounds like a book that, I would definitely be invested in if it is, right? So, okay, let's go through some of these phases, because a lot of times we hear, yeah, you need to forgive, and forgiveness is not for the other person. Now, let's just say this for anybody that, I know that I have definitely, people have their own belief systems and things like that, but what do you do in that process where you're like, all right, I know I need to forgive, but all right, how do that look? I don't even know what that looked like. Because I love how you said it is in phases. You got to do this, and then you might get to this, and then you might get. So, like, kind of really break down what does that look like going through some of the phases of forgiveness, and break down what forgiveness truly is and what it is.
Yeah. So again, I'm a strong believer in God. And so if I cannot forgive, then God cannot forgive me, right? And we are living in a world of sin, which we would think, that God is going to punish us and we're not going to go to heaven because we did X, Y, Z, right? So that's big to me, right? Just imagine if God just said, you know what, life coach B, I'm not going to forgive you. You're done. You did this, this, and this. That's it. You're not coming to heaven. You're done for, right? And so that's the way that I look at it with other people, right? I want God to forgive me. I know I've made mistakes. I know nobody's perfect, right? And so it's like you said, it's more about releasing and giving me freedom. If you're holding a grudge against somebody, it's like poison, right? And it starts inside of your heart. And when you have a bad heart, you don't treat yourself good and you don't treat other people good either. And so you're holding in all these negative feelings, and you're not having a good attitude towards certain things, and you're blocking certain perspectives and things like that. And so it's important to just forgive. Forgive is forgiving almost as if the issue never even happened, right? You're forgiving at a clean slate. You're not holding on to little pieces of what this person did to you. And that has a lot with binding up the issues that you had in your past as well. Because I went through a lot of things with my childhood and my real biological father, right? And I noticed I was very, very bitter at first when it came to men because I was not forgiving my real father, right? Not only that, but I wasn't forgiving my abuser. So even though I moved on in this life and I had a good headspace and I'm ready to go and I'm loving myself and I'm good, but what if another nice man approaches me, right? A really good man that respects me and that's equally yoked and shares the same values as me and all of that. I'm not even seeing that right now because I'm so trapped in my trauma and I'm still haven't forgiven the person that has hurt me, right? And so hurt people, right? So you're walking around with these patches of unforgiveness, all these chips on your shoulder. And so you're affecting and you're hurting the next person you come across. And you're also hurting yourself because you're stopping yourself from moving forward and being free and creating peace for yourself. You're always unpeaceful. You're always having unpleasant thoughts and unpleasant feelings. And it's always like a negative filter that you're looking through when it comes to other people and opportunities and how you see yourself in this life. So forgiveness is fully releasing, like woosah, like you're letting go of all of that, no matter how bad it hurts you. And you're creating peace with that. And you're given the opportunity to get freedom, to break free of all those chains of trauma that was locking you down and stopping you from reaching your true self, from believing in who you are, from rediscovering who you are, as well as coming into counterships and interactions with other people, right? And that has a play of dating as well. Like I said, there's been so many good guys that tried to talk to me in the past. And I was just like, nope, that's it. You're going to be just like him. You're going to treat me just like that. And so it's about breaking those chains and being free so that you can move forward without any weight of the pain and the trauma that has caused you in the past.
Okay, I definitely understand that. And I appreciate that insight on that. Now, you brought me to another thought, right? Which we go through something and it makes us say, oh, that's a red flag. Nah, I'm good, right? But
right.
Does the trauma that we go through kind of project the idea that we know that nobody's perfect, but we're looking for perfectionism?
Yes.
Because everybody's going to have a red flag in some type of way.
Right.
So it's like, well, I cut everybody off.
You're in control of how you feel. You're in control. You are the determining factor of your feelings. No one else can control how you feel. Remember, you're in control how you feel. So control your feelings.